are going to be reading chapter 4 today out of Meet Felicity. And today Felicity is wearing a very fancy gown. I actually think this gown might be the one that belongs to Elizabeth in the collection. My daughter gave this one to me, so I think that's what it is. But Felicity is at the dining table today. This is official American Girl furniture. We've got the pretty kind of blue silk covered chairs, and this would have been the style of furniture like with the back during this time period. And they like to have tea during colonial times. So this is a little tea set with a creamer and little sugar right here. And they have little spoons to stir in their cream and sugar. One interesting thing about their tea set is that there's no handle in their teacups. They just would hold the teacups like that. Another interesting thing was they didn't have tea bags like we have today, so they'd have a little tea caddy, just a little tea caddy, and inside they would have tea leaves. So inside of a tea bag, you can see there's little bits of leaves that are kind of crumbled up in a tea bag today. But back then, the leaves were bigger and they weren't in a tea bag, so they would actually pour the hot water over a little container that held the tea leaves. So they would kind of pour their hot water through there, and then that would flavor their tea. So this is her tea set, and in one of the later books they talk a lot about the tea parties and Felicity going to learn all the rules and manners that were involved in a colonial tea party. So we'll probably read that book a little bit later. But today we are going back to Felicity wanting to see Penny. Even though her mother told her that she needs to forget about the horse, she kind of got her little brother and sister in a little bit of a dangerous position last time she went to see Penny, and Mr. Nye caught them. So she told her mother that she heard her, but she said in her heart she didn't really put Penny out of it. So let's see what happens in today's chapter. Chapter 4 is called Ben's Promise. The last sliver of moonlight made a silvery path across the floor of Felicity's room. As soundlessly as in a dream, Felicity edged out of bed. She slipped her petticoats over her shift, pulled on her stockings and garters, and tiptoed to the door. Down the stairs she crept, skipping to the step that creaked. She was shaking with nervousness. It was better when she was outside. Felicity put on her shoes. Then she gathered her petticoats in her hand and ran fast through the garden, through the dark streets, past the sleeping houses. On she ran to the edge of town, where the trees grew close to the road, and she was just another ghostly shadow. By the time Felicity reached the pasture, she was out of breath. She stood on the lowest rung of the fence and searched the darkness for Penny. The horse was tied to a stake by a thick rope. Penny looked up and tossed her head. Felicity did not dare speak aloud. "I'm here. It's me," she whispered to Penny. "You don't have to trust me yet, but you will. I know you will." Penny did not move. Felicity left a small apple near the stake. "Goodbye," she whispered. Then she ran home. The sky was only just beginning to grow light around the edges. When Felicity came to breakfast, her mother looked at her. "Felicity," she said, "your petticoats are wet and muddy. Most likely your stockings are wet too, all the way up to your garters. What on earth have you been doing?" Felicity looked down at her muddy hem. I was just in the garden. Mrs. Merriman smiled. Digging around the pumpkins you planted? She asked. My impatient one. They'll not grow faster just to please you. Now sit down and eat your breakfast. I need breeches, thought Felicity. Then I can run freely. Then it won't matter if I get wet and muddy. But how can I get them? She found the answer in the mending pile. It was a pair of Ben's breeches made of thin black cotton. Felicity knew Ben didn't wear these breeches very often, just to church sometimes. He wouldn't miss them if she borrowed them for a while. The next morning before dawn, Felicity sneaked out of the house again. This time she stopped by the stable. She had hidden Ben's breeches there under an old bucket. She put the breeches on over her shift and tied them around her waist with a rope. Ben was skinny but tall, so the breeches went down to Felicity's ankles. As she ran through the silent streets toward the tannery, her legs felt so free. For once she could run as fast as she wanted to, without petticoats to hold her back. Morning after morning, before anyone was awake, Felicity slipped out of the house to visit Penny. At first, Felicity stayed outside the pasture. After a few days, she sat on the top rail of the fence. She sat near, but not too near, the stake to which Penny was tied. Felicity never spoke aloud. She knew if she were rough or noisy, she would frighten the horse. Even though Felicity couldn't sit still for her stitchery, she could sit almost without moving at all when she was near Penny. She felt peaceful, sitting on the rail fence those misty gray mornings, watching the beautiful horse. Sometimes Penny was calm. Sometimes she pulled on her rope or raised her head to sniff the wind. She's thinking about running away, thought Felicity. She's thinking about freedom. The first time Felicity climbed off the fence into the pasture, Penny tossed her head and danced away. But she did not whinny or shy away. Soon, Felicity thought Penny expected her to come each morning, and maybe even looked forward to seeing her. Penny knew Felicity was kind and patient and would not hurt her. With all her heart, Felicity wished she had more time to spend with Penny so that the horse would trust her completely. One morning after breakfast, Felicity was trying to hide her yawns as she practiced her stitches. She sat up straight when she heard her mother ask, "Ben, did you put your breeches in the mending pile as I told you to?" "Yes, ma'am," answered Ben. "I don't see them there," said Mrs. Merriman. "Where are they?" "I do not know, ma'am," said Ben. "Well, look about you, lad," said Mrs. Merriman. "Breeches don't just disappear." "Yes, ma'am," said Ben. Felicity kept her head down, but watched Ben out of the corner of her eye. He looked confused and a little embarrassed. He has no idea what has happened to his breeches, thought Felicity. I wonder how he would feel if he did know. But no one knew Felicity's secret. No one knew about the lovely times she had with Penny all those dreamlike mornings. Felicity's secret made her happy. All day long, while she was mending or practicing her writing or playing with Nan and William, Felicity thought about Penny. The beautiful horse was growing more friendly every day. Felicity always took an apple to Penny. One morning, after Felicity had been visiting her for a few weeks, Penny took the apple right from her hand. Felicity held her breath, when she felt Penny's warm nose tickling her fingers. She stood still. She did not try to touch Penny. From that time on, Penny made a game of asking for the apple. She would nudge Felicity gently and nicker until Felicity held the apple out to her. On one drizzly morning, Penny nuzzled Felicity for the apple as usual. But before she took it, Penny raised her head, whinnied, and seemed worried. Felicity stepped back. "What's wrong, Penny?" she whispered. Just then, Felicity heard dogs barking and yowling. "Jiggy Nye! He was coming out to the pasture!" Felicity dropped to the ground, rolled under the fence, and hid in the tall, scraggly grass. Penny whinnied and pawed the ground. "Don't start with me, ye useless horse!" Jiggy snarled. He came into the pasture and stood by the fence near Felicity's hiding spot. Felicity dared not move. Her heart thumped as she watched Jiggy put a bucket of water on the ground in front of Penny. "No oats till ye let me ride ye," he muttered to the horse. "Starve to death for all I care." As soon as Jiggy turned his back, Felicity got up and ran home as fast as she could. But nothing, not even Jiggy Nye, could keep Felicity away from Penny. The mornings grew chill as September blew into October. Felicity shivered when she pulled herself out of bed these mornings. But the sky stayed dark longer, so she had more time with Penny. There was frost on the grass the morning Felicity untied Penny's rope from the stake and led her around the pasture for the first time. Penny followed behind Felicity, leaving the whole length of rope between them. But after a week or so, Penny followed with her nose right next to Felicity's shoulder. Sometimes Penny even pushed at her playfully. At the end of their walks, Penny let Felicity stroke her neck and rub her nose. "Aye, that's my girl," Felicity whispered in her ear. "You know I love you, don't you, Penny? Don't you, girl? You know I won't rush you." The day came when all Felicity's patience was rewarded. One morning, Penny was standing quietly next to the fence, as if she were waiting for Felicity. Slowly, Felicity untied the rope from the stake. Slowly, she climbed onto Penny's back. At first, Penny trotted. Felicity sat up straight and held on to her mane. As Penny's stiff trot eased into a smooth canter, Felicity leaned closer and closer to Penny's neck. Soon they were flying across the pasture, moving as swift and sure as the wind. Penny's hooves hardly seemed to touch the ground. Above them, the sky was pearly gray. The wind made Felicity's eyes water. She had moved that fast only in her dreams. Every day, Penny did something new. The first time Penny jumped over a small pile of hay, Felicity was so surprised she fell off the horse's back. After that, they tried higher and higher jumps. A heap of rocks, a tree stump, a stack of logs. Felicity never fell off again. She learned that Penny tensed her neck just before she jumped. That was a signal to Felicity to hold on tight. Penny was full of surprises. One morning, she carried Felicity across the pasture in a gallop, then leaped effortlessly over the broken down part of the fence. That morning, they rode farther than ever before. Felicity lost track of time as they cantered deeper and deeper into the woods with no fences to stop them. When they jumped back over the fence, back into the pasture, Felicity retied Penny's rope to the stake quickly. She knew it was late. sky was turning pink and the mist was lifting out of the meadows. Felicity ran home. She slipped into the stable as usual and changed from the breeches to her petticoats quickly. She was just rolling up the breeches to hide them under the bucket when she heard someone say, "You!" It was Ben. Felicity froze with the breeches in her hands. She said nothing. "What do you have there?" asked Ben in his coldest voice. He came forward. "What? You have my best Sunday breeches?" He took them out of Felicity's hands and looked at them. "They're wet and covered with mud." He sniffed them. "Whoosh! Oh, they smell like a horse." He looked at Felicity. "Felicity, are you—" Felicity interrupted him. "I'm sorry, Ben. I was borrowing them. I just needed them." Ben sat down. "Felicity, tell me what you are doing," he said quietly. Felicity took a deep breath. "I'm visiting Penny, the horse at the tannery." "That horse?" said Ben. His eyes were wide. "Oh, she's so fine, Ben," said Felicity. "She's gentle and dear, and she's so fast." "What?" Ben exclaimed. "You mean you're riding her?" "Oh, yes," said Felicity. "It's a wonder, Ben. It's just like riding the wind." Ben shook his head. "Felicity, I don't know whether you are the bravest or the most foolish girl I've ever known," he said. "I'd be afraid to ride that horse. She looks like she would throw any rider sky high." "Well, she was afraid at first, but now she trusts me," said Felicity. "How long have you been going out there?" Ben asked. "Every day since the rain stopped," Felicity answered. "That's almost 1 month," Ben said. "You've been up before dawn, dressing in my breeches and running out to see that horse for 1 month?" "Yes." Ben sat still. He stared at Felicity and said nothing. Then he asked, "How long can you keep doing this? You can't do it forever. Mr. Nye will surely see you someday, and Penny is his horse." "I heard Mr. Nye say that anyone who can ride her could have her," said Felicity. "I can ride her, so she will be mine." Ben sighed. "Felicity, you have set your heart on things too much. I don't believe Mr. Nye or your father will let you keep that horse." He saw Felicity's stubborn frown and he grinned. "But then I never would have believed that you could have ridden that horse either." "I'm going to get Penny away from Mr. Nye somehow," Felicity said. "I have to." "Aye," said Ben. "You best do it soon." "I can't hurry Penny," said Felicity. "I have to be patient with her." Ben nodded. "So then," asked Felicity, "do you want your breeches back?" "Not smelling the way they do," laughed Ben. "No, you need them more than I do. You keep them as long as you like. I'll keep your secret." "Thank you, Ben," said Felicity. She gave him a quick grin and hurried in to breakfast. Sharing Felicity's secret seemed to change Ben. He wasn't so shy. Sometimes he whistled, and he even surprised everyone by joking once or twice at supper. And he was true to his word. That Sunday, Mrs. Merriman said, "Ben, have you still not found your good breeches? They were fine, expensive India cotton. 'Tis not like you to be so careless." "I beg your pardon, ma'am. said Ben. "I know where they are now." Felicity felt her face growing red. Was Ben going to tell? "I lent them to a friend," said Ben easily. "Indeed," said Mrs. Merriman. "May I ask why?" "My friend needs them more than I do," said Ben. "Well," sighed Mrs. Merriman, "dust off your old woolen breeches then. We needn't go to church looking like a band of ruffians." Felicity smiled at Ben. He had called her his friend. He truly was a friend to her. All that week, Felicity thought long and hard about what Ben had said. She knew he was right. She couldn't keep her secret much longer. And that's the end of chapter 4. So, what do you think is going to happen next time? You think her secret's going to be found out? She's kind of getting herself in pretty thick. She's disobeyed her parents. She took something that didn't belong to her in Ben's breeches. She lied to her mother about where she's been. So there's quite a few things she's doing here that aren't really obeying and doing the right thing, but we'll have to see how that works out. So petticoats, I don't have a picture of petticoats to show you, but they wore lots of layers under their dresses, layers of ruffles and things. So not only did she have this long skirt to get in her way, but then layers of ruffles and things underneath. And so that made it really hard to run. So the breeches, I think we saw in the picture there, they were kind of like pants that men wore, but they went just below the knee. So they were kind of like extra long shorts. Not quite as long as pants, but extra long shorts. And so by Felicity stuffing in her shift, which is her kind of her underdress here, with her kind of tucking it in like a long shirt into those pants, she was able to take off the skirt and dress part, and so she could move more freely. And it talked about having stockings and garters. So there was a little picture in the book, but you can also see here, these are stockings. They're long, like we'd probably call them knee socks today, but they didn't have elastic back then. So their knee socks would fall down unless they had a way to tie them up. And so this little tie here, that's called the garter. So they just took a little ribbon and they tied it around, and that's what held up their socks. That's called the garter. This garter was lost before I got Felicity. I got her used, so she only came with one garter. Luckily, these stockings, the American Girl ones, stay up on her without that being there. So that ends chapter 4. Tune in next time to see, does Felicity's secret get found out? Thanks for listening.